Oh hey, what's going on you guys? Welcome back to another video. If this is your first time stopping in, thank you for joining me. Today we're going to be going over a topic that I've seen brought up hundreds of times on the Road Glide forums, and that is T-bars. These new 24s and 25s, everybody's kind of unsure about, what throttle tubes work, what bars work, what size risers they should go with, and there are a lot of things to consider with that. Seat height, sweep on the bars, 1.125" versus 1" clamping area. So I thought now would be a good time, since I'm making some adaptations to my T-bar setup, to kind of just peel back the layers on everything that you need to know, basically from your tree up, controls wise, on these new model bikes. Let's get started. Alright, we have a lot to go over today. There's a lot more that goes into choosing a bar and riser setup than I had any idea existed. It took a year of trial and error to get to where I am today, and I'm glad that I can share this knowledge with you guys. So we're going to start off by changing out all of my seat options and showing you how the bars and risers that are currently on my bike fit me with those different seat heights, because that's the first place to start. Let's check it out. Okay, to start things off, I am almost 5'11", and I have a 30-inch inseam, so I have a little bit taller torso, so I may be more equivalent to a low 6-foot type rider in terms of torso size. So I'm sitting currently on my Saddlemen tuck and roll step-up seat, and it raised me up about 2 inches higher than the stock Harley Davidson seat, as well as the Harley Davidson step-up seat that they offer. So, got my Kraus 10-inch risers and Thrasher mid-bend bars here. And this is what you can expect for a hand height. It's not bad. It's a little bit down from the shoulders. They say ideal touring height for hands is actually at the same height as your heart, which is about where I'm at. But unfortunately, it's kind of just not quite it for me. I got used to, because even the stock bars are higher than this, I kind of got used to being about up here, right? And I kind of like that. I don't really like that. I'm kind of feeling like instead of here, I'm kind of having to lean down and in to that shorter height there, And so I just want to get it back to, about 2 inches higher for me. So I'm going to show you guys now what the stock seat looks like with this setup, because that's about right where I want to be. Okay, so here is our stock Harley Davidson seat, and that is already better. If it was right there with the Saddlemen, I think that I would be okay with it. Still, I would like to just be a little bit more up there. Still below the shoulders, but just a little bit further up and a little bit closer to me. So with the stock seat, here's what you get, right? That's pretty good right there. I can understand why people go with a 9.5" in mid-bend if they're using the stock seat. That's nice. So I'm gonna go grab the Harley Davidson Step Up and show you guys what that looks like. Okay, we are on the Harley Davidson Red Stitch step-up seat now, and I never realized it before, but it definitely sits me further back than the stock seat and the Saddlemen seat. So I don't like that. I'm having to stretch out to the bars, but you can see that my hand position is in a decent spot. I still would like them a little bit higher. Depending on your height, you may want to go mid-bend, or you may want to go up to the high bend, even at this seat option. Depending on what riser setup you have. If you have a solid setup, that's what you would have to do. If you have a Kraus setup, you could just change out your legs like we're going to do. So next thing we're going to do is throw the Saddlemen seat back on, because these two seats are junk. And I'm going to take you guys in, show you my setup, why I'm changing it, what I currently went with, so on and so forth. So let's get rolling. Okay, so here we have my Kraus 10-inch pullback riser setup. I got it used last year along with a set of ODI mid-bend bars, and I really liked the setup, but as you guys saw, when I changed seats, that changed my hand positioning, and I no longer like how it currently feels. Fortunately for me, Kraus, unlike other options, offers a modular setup here. So we're currently running 5.5-inch legs here in the riser. For 120 bucks, I picked up a set of 7.5-inch riser legs. So all we do is swap these out for the taller ones. This pullback section stays the same, and we now have taller risers, right? I really like that, because some of the billet options where it's just a solid piece, the only way that you can get your bars higher is to either add a spacer, which can get dangerous because you're running the bolt through the spacer and then into the leg. You're not making any contact with the spacer. So that's kind of a sketchy failure point possibly if you're really torquing on your bars. Or the other option is to just go from a mid-bend to a high-bend bar, but I don't like the way that looks. So I really like the modular capability behind this riser setup. Also, in this pullback section here, there are polyurethane bushings which help with vibration dampening. So instead of having poly bushings down low, which then offers a little bit of flex, I'm running billet ones down low, and then I have the vibration dampening up here in the head. I'm in no way affiliated with Kraus, never talked to them, they don't know me from Adam, so I'm not getting paid to say any of this. I just really do like the idea behind the product. It's different than most riser setups, and I like it. So we're gonna get going on this, and as we're tearing things apart, I'm gonna talk about bars with you guys, as well as grips and other things of the sort. So let's get rolling. Okay, so we're gonna start things off here by removing the plastic clamshell that protects all of our top tree and wiring and stuff. Just a Phillips up there. Pop this clip, there'll be 2 more Phillips under here. Actually, no, stock they were Phillips. I've changed them to some Torx bits since this is over our locking system here. Now keep in mind, I have showed all of this before on my T-bar install video, which I will link up above, so you guys will have that. Okay, so from here, we can just pop these apart. Slip those out of the way. Now I do have a switch here for my fog lights, so I have to pop that out. So next thing I'm going to do is unclip this wiring. I do have to remove the bars for this, but that's no big deal. It gives me a good opportunity to show you guys the vibration dampening that's in here, as well as kind of just this whole process. Okay, so we've got these wires free. I should not need to really remove everything from the bars too bad. This should just be able to slide up the riser here, but we'll get into that as we get going. Now I am hoping that I don't need to worry about running longer cables. I think I should be fine. They're way too long right now because this is a lower setup than even stock was. So we'll see, but I've never really liked the way this stock clutch cable runs along the bars. This is shaped really well for those stock ones, but not well for this T-bar setup. So if I do have issues with the clutch side of things, that's okay to me because I honestly want to replace this cable with a different one and a better system there, and a Mueller setup honestly for an easy clutch pull. So expect that coming soon in some videos. Brake side of things, really hope I don't have to worry about a longer brake line, but if I do, it's not the end of the world, and it's doing nothing but raining here in Washington anyways, so if I can't ride for a few days because of that, it's okay with me. So here's our riser legs. Got a good clear shot of them now. We're gonna go ahead and pop these zip ties off and undo the top clamp of the bars here. Now is a good time. I should have already done this. We're gonna cover the tank up with a towel. Okay, so while we're doing this, I'm gonna talk about 1 1/8 inch versus 1 inch riser clamps. When you go to Kraus's website, you're gonna see that they have both options available. This setup, as I said, was used, and it came with an 1 1/8 clamping area. Now, that limits your options on handlebars. Stock Harley Davidson handlebar clamping is 1 inch. The Thrashin bars are a 1 inch bar. And that's not just the controls, that's the entire bar. My old setup, that ODI podium set, it's a moto bar, it's an 1 1/8 clamping area down to a 1 inch for the controls. So that means that to run these Thrashin 1 inch bars, I am running Kraus's 1 inch to 1 1/8 inch spacers. They clamp in here, they're super solid. I put red Loctite on them before clamping, and I mean, I've loosened a few of these already and nothing's going anywhere. They're super, super secure, but if you're buying a new setup, just buy what you anticipate you're gonna wanna use. If you're not using a moto style bar, you have a lot more bar options, to be honest, if you just go with a 1 inch clamping. That's what Thrashins are. Kraus, you can pick that. Most of the other options I'm sure are 1 inch as well, so keep that in mind if you're asking, well, which one do I want, which one do I need? Go with the 1 inch. You're most likely going to have a lot more bar options that you like with that. So as we get further along with this, I'll explain to you why I chose to go with the Thrashin bars instead of those moto bars. They're a lot more comfortable. I'll give you that as a hint. wires out of the way, and we have access to our whole setup up here. Okay, so now we can remove the clamps here. These are 3/4. And those are tight. This is gonna be kind of nice because I'm gonna get to show you guys this entire setup, how this stuff is constructed and how it goes together. Okay, so here is our top piece with our hardware and our polyurethane bushings inside that give us that little bit of vibration dampening. Okay, well, it appears I was mistaken. We do not need to remove that top section. Looks like we're actually going to access where the leg bolts to the pullback section from the bottom up, which is okay. I wanted to take this all apart. I wanted to see how it worked. It was just one extra step, but keep in mind, if you were doing this at home, you could have actually left your bars and everything on and just accessed it from the bottom here. So good information. So at this point, the risers are completely free, ready to be unbolted from the tree underneath. I do believe I can access the hardware that way and not have to remove the entire top tree. So hopefully that is the case. I'm gonna go ahead and jack the bike up, get it weightless in the front so that I can turn the bars and see if I can get to that. Okay, nice and easy here with the bars turned. If we look up underneath here, right there is our riser bolts. So really easy. We're gonna do that on this side, move over to the other side, do the same thing, and those risers will be out. And there we have it. They're out. We're gonna get these on the bench, take a look at what we got. All right, you guys, so here we have a 5/8 Allen slot, and that is how we're going to back these legs off of the pullback section. There are studs in there, so that's how that goes. So we're gonna run these off, and we have the same system on the 7.5s. So should be pretty straightforward. And there you have it. So now we can throw a wire brush on these, clean them up, throw some red Loctite on, and throw the 7.5s on. We'll figure out the torque, and we'll torque them on. So Kraus is saying 55 foot-pounds of torque on these legs here, so that's what we'll do. And according to them, you can actually get away with doing this on the bike. They say if you just loosen one and then remove the other, you can spin it out of the way and do it that way. I'm sure that's possible. I wanted to be able to show you guys. So I'm kind of doing this the harder way just because. Doesn't make much sense, I know, but it does to me, and I'm having fun doing it. So that's how we're doing it. So this is our isolated riser top piece, and this is our legs and our pullback section here. So basically what we're going to do here is drop these bolts through the top of the isolated section here. We're going to make sure that we put on the bottom side, because we have the same bushings on the bottom, we'll put these washers as well. That holds them in place. Here's our isolated section, all Loctited up. So the other thing that I really like about this setup versus a lot of other riser setups, a lot of riser setups don't have a piece between the two risers themselves. And so the way that they expect you to line everything up and tighten it is to actually put everything loosely on the bike, put the bars on, let the bars center everything, and then torque the bottom legs up, because they can actually articulate independently of each other. I really don't like that, to be quite honest. I think this is a much more sturdy, well thought out product. So that's another reason that I give Kraus the win here. So these bushing bolts here also get torqued to 255 foot-pounds. Okay, this riser setup is done and ready to go back on the bike. Here we have our Bushings, we're gonna go ahead and replace these bolts. They did come with new ones for the legs. They're the same length, but new ones are gonna be healthier quality threads and whatnot. So we'll use those, Loctite them up. Instructions say blue Loctite, probably still gonna use red because I never have an issue using red Loctite and I like it on things that I don't want to move for a long time. So we're gonna do that next. Black bushings go on top so that visually it's a little bit nicer, and the silver ones go on the bottom. That's all there is to it, no biggie there. All right, here they are on the bike. They are not torqued yet, but they are tight. We've got the bars situated in here. The top clamp never even came loose from the bars since they were Loctited on nicely. So really happy with that. Didn't even lose the positioning of my bars. Blue Loctite on these bolts going in. All right, we have the bolts all tight. Time to torque them. 6 foot-pounds according to Kraus. You want to starter pattern them. Well, apparently we're already there. Okay, so we're all torqued up here. Got the wires cleanly run down between the riser legs there, and we have everything plugged back in. We are ready to put the clamshell back on and reconnect our 3 connectors to my fog light switch. So we torqued the bolts up through the tree to the riser legs. Much easier off of the lift. That way you can go lock to lock with the steering and have weight on the wheel so that you know, it doesn't spin on you as easily. I still had to brace it with my foot, but it worked out perfect. So I'm gonna get the bike back on the lift. Okay, so getting right into handlebars. This should not take long, but it is very valuable information that you need to consider when choosing your setup. So the reason that a lot of people tend to go with these Thrashin bars is they're very ergonomic for the rider. Much like factory, they have a good pullback. You're gonna hear pullback or sweep. Same thing. Basically what it means is how much the bars tend to pull back towards the rider, and also the shape of the angle that it comes out. So that is also obviously going to depend on the angle that you mount the bars to the T-bars, because if you have them more this way, obviously everything is going to be articulated a little bit more towards you and down. So you get to kind of choose that angle. But to begin with, the Thrashin bars have a lot more pullback than a lot of the other options. It has about twice as much pullback as my ODI podiums had. So you can see here, if I put the ends up against each other, right, put them at the same angle, there's a lot more angle this way on the Thrashin bars than the ODI podiums. And that's okay. This is what we would consider an aggressive bar, but it's just not as comfortable for me. I end up having to be more this way with my wrists, you know, more in to fit that position. And what that ends up doing for me is I get a pinch in my shoulder blade on long rides because I'm actually using those muscles to hold my elbows more up and my hands more up to the bars. So much more ergonomic, much more comfortable. I'm able to sit and relax my elbows and let the bars kind of just hold my hands up versus me kind of having to hold my hands up to the bars. So really, really nice setup. Now, as I mentioned, Thrashin only has 1-inch bars. So you're gonna want a 1-inch clamping area. The clamping area on these moto bars are 1 1/8 inches. So keep that in mind. Okay, so getting into grips. For the new 24s and now 25s, there are not very many clamp-on grip options. What I mean by that is, like these ones, these ODI waffles are glued on. So that's pretty simple. There are a lot of companies that make the glue-on version. You just, 1 inch, get a little bit of grip glue, throw it on, slap them on, good to go. But in terms of clamp on, you don't have a lot of options yet. So one of the companies that offers a good glue-on solution is Thrashin, but I actually ended up disliking those, and it's a personal reason. So don't think that I have any sort of disregard for Thrashin's products. I run a lot of their products. I have their floorboards, I have their handlebars, you know, so I love their products, but I don't like their grips because they are narrower than stock and than like the ODI podiums and other options on the market. These are a 4.5-inch grip, and when you purchase their aftermarket throttle tube, which I did, it is also a 4.5-inch width versus I almost want to say about 5-inch. I'll measure it and check, but what does that mean? Well, this is my hand with no glove on a 4.5-inch grip. So I don't know if you can see that, but there is basically no room for my hand. You can barely see either side of the grip. This is obviously right where your switch housing is, so no room there. Now, what happens when I add my Gerbing heated gloves or some thick, you know, insulated freaking Gore-Tex gloves, which I do ride in quite often because I ride during the winter. In Washington State, it rains a lot and it's cold. So the grips didn't work out well for me, just being too narrow. I didn't like that. So I decided to go back to the stock throttle tube. I just had to file down some of the little knurls that are from factory when you cut off the stock grip. So you just cut your stock grip off, file those down, sand it all smooth, and then you can glue whatever grips you want on, which is what we have done here. That obviously will change over time. I'm sure these new companies will come out with more solutions. But keep in mind that Harley Davidson stock bars and these Thrashin bars and most other aftermarket bars that you're going to look at when you look at bar and riser setups are a 1-inch. So any 1-inch grips that you see that you like, it will be thinner and larger than 1 inch for the throttle tube side. So it'll fit, even if it says that it doesn't, it does, and 1 inch on this side. About 4 5/8 of actual like grab area on these ODI grips, and on the Thrashin grips, yeah, 4 1/8. So 4 1/8 versus 4 5/8. So yeah, half an inch difference, and it really does make a difference in terms of comfort with some larger gloves, or if you have big meaty hands. So keep that in mind. So while we're on the subject of bars and grips, we need to discuss the throttle tube. One of the biggest things that I see people have issues with when they do one of these setups, or even just adjusting their switch housing, is they have issues with the throttle sticking. There are a few reasons that this can occur, and I've actually come across a few that I haven't seen anybody else talk about on YouTube, so I think I can kind of shed some light on that. So the first and most obvious reason that you're going to have your throttle stick is if it is too far onto the bars, right? So if you have friction with the inside of your grip up against the bar end, you're going to have the throttle stick. So what I like to do is, as you can see, the throttle can rock here. So I like to rock it in and then still leave about 1/2 centimeter from the end of the bar. That's how they do it at factory pretty much. If you've ever taken them off, you'll see like where it lines up, and that's where it lines up. So if you do that, you should not have issues in that aspect. So then you can consider these next options, right? So when you clamp your bars here, you need to look at where your wires coming out of the bar run. So on these 24s, it comes out and it goes around the throttle by wire sensor slash housing, and goes into the switch housing on the back here. So as it comes out, it runs along and goes over the top of that throttle by wire position piece, right? So, and when this throttle tube goes in and it's connected to that, it does actually articulate and spin, right? So I've seen the wires coming right out of the bars and up against that position sensor slash throttle by wire, whatever unit you want to call it, and it rubs and it creates a friction that doesn't allow the throttle to move smoothly. So that is going to be the next thing that you want to consider. The third thing is really just the bar size itself, right? So they're supposed to be 1-inch bars. You're not supposed to have any issues. Thrashin has removed the powder coat from the end there in the hopes that that was enough to, make sure that the throttle tube doesn't stick. It may be that their throttle tube is a little bit bigger than the stock one, so you can get away with it. But with the stock throttle tube on this setup, it is still a little bit tight. It articulates back and forth, but it doesn't articulate up and down. It's still very tight in that aspect. So the next thing that you can consider doing is sanding down a little bit your bar end. You could take a set of calipers and caliper out your current bar setup versus your stock setup, And I think you'll find that the stock bar is just a little bit smaller, because I remember the stock throttle tube kind of really having some good play on there, and I never had issues with the throttle stick in there. When you're tightening your switch housing, it's really important to push down, I've found, as you tighten. The way that all of this ends up lining up, it's usually got resistance on the bottom half, and you can actually see that when you take it apart. You'll see where on the inside of the switch housing, where the paint is actually worn away from friction from the throttle tube on that bottom half, meaning if you push down here, you should be more centered around the bar itself and not have as much issues with the throttle sticking. So hopefully those things help. If you're having that issue, try those things. I pretty much guarantee that's gonna be it. I don't know what else it could be. That's kind of everything there. So moving on. All right, you guys, well, it's time for the moment of truth. I'm gonna show you how I fit now with the 12-inch overall risers, the mid-bend Thrashing bars, and my Saddleman seat. I could not be happier with how this turned out. Look at that. Absolutely perfect. I still have a complete line of sight of my screen. There's about 1 centimeter from the top of the bar clamp and my field of view of the screen, so in no way is it blocking the screen. The cables are perfect in length. As we've talked about before, the riser setup, the 9.5 inch or 10 inch that you're going to get with a Thrashing or the 10 inch Kraus, does actually lower the bars lower than stock. So the cables actually end up being too long in that case. So bringing it back up like this, the cables are perfect in length, just solid. So when I measured from the same spot, the bolt to the brake lever here, it came out to 18 inches. Before we were at 17 inches. So adding those 2 inches went up 2, almost 2, and also it came back about 1 inch. And the bars did not move from their position where they were to the top clamp because they were Loctited to it still. So no changes there whatsoever. So I love it. I think you can see the level of comfort here. I can sit perfectly upright. My elbows can be down. They're bent. I mean, it's just rock solid. We're still lower than the shoulders here. I'm a little bit more into the bike now. With the bars higher and more leaned down into it, I kind of felt on top of the bike. I really like feeling in the bike and locked in. So this is exactly what I've been craving. This is what the doctor ordered. I'm extremely happy with this 3-point position here. My feet, my hands, my seat, everything now has come together to just be the perfect setup for me. So I really hope that I gave you guys all of the information that you need to make a good decision about what risers you go with in terms of brand, what size you go with, what clamping diameter you go with, what bar size you go with, bar height you go with, pullback or sweep, you know, what kind of grips you want. You should not be in the dark about any of this information any longer. So if you could, please give the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to comment down below with any questions, concerns, or advice that you have for other people deciding to do this. And don't forget to subscribe, because we still have a ton of cool parts that we're waiting for my bike. So I will catch you guys in my next off week.